Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. A little confession coming from the White House with the goal of actually celebrating an achievement. I look at this achievement from a different angle, and I would say the angle is the opposite of a great achievement. So this article comes from Sputnik and is from today, the 27th of November 2022. This is the title. White House says Biden helped create strongest alliances in US history. And this is true. That's true. But this is kind of like claiming when you, let's say, commit a robbery, a bank robbery, and after you commit the bank robbery, you brag how good the whole enterprise worked and how united you guys are in the process of robbing the bank. That's how I see it. Yes, it is true. You created the strongest alliance, even though the definition of alliance here is not an alliance, it is a club. And not even a club, I would take it as a plantation, where you have a master, which is United States of America, you have one house servant, which is Great Britain, and the rest are plantation slaves, field slaves, the ones who cut the sugar cane, okay? Sometimes France tries to ascend to the level of a house servant like a Great Britain, but stays in a house for about 2 minutes and a half and then is kicked out back in the field to cut some more sugar cane. Okay, that's an alliance, but why was this alliance formed? Obviously, the correct answer is because of Russia. Okay, what did Russia do? The correct answer is they invaded a sovereign country, Ukraine, without any reasons. No reason whatsoever, unprovoked. The correct answer is they're just criminals and crazy. This is the correct answer. And since they are so crazy and criminals, there is a high risk that the Russians will invade the rest of the world, but start first with Eastern Europe and then move into the Western Europe and then cross the Atlantic and attack our way of life, our freedoms. I feel like crying. This reminds me of September 11, when they were saying with straight face on the TV, why do they hate us? And they would provide the answer. They hate our way of life. They hate our freedoms. And people bought that. So the same here. There will be a lot of people who would say, yeah, man, we're the greatest alliance. Now, is this enemy, Russia, a manufactured, delusional, or illusional, a fantasy enemy, manufactured, so we can have the great alliance? Or really is Russia what these guys are calling it to be, criminal terrorist state? Every time you analyze an issue, you start with the beginning. The beginning is the known information that you have regarding the issue. And obviously the important stuff and unimportant stuff. Because when you talk about a crime, you say, okay, Tom Jones committed the crime. Let's go to the origin. You're not going to go to his birth and check the hospital where he was born, the weight, the length, the color of the eyes. You don't do that. So there's certain information about the issue that they're not important, irrelevant to the case. In this case, you got to go to 1991, 1990, 1989. Those are the years where the whole thing started. And it started with the understanding, not the collapse, It was a collapse, if you want to call it, with an understanding between the West, United States, and Soviet Union to allow the Eastern European countries under the Soviet influence to choose their path. Those non-bloody revolutions that occurred 1990, 1989 in Eastern Europe, you know, all the Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Poland, these countries, they did not just decide overnight, you know what, we're not going to be with the Soviets anymore. We decide just to take our hats, put the other hats on, and just be a capitalist country and a democracy. Do you think that's the way it was decided? We know it was not decided that way. It was spoken by those guys over there, and even forces above the heads of Gorbachev. Gorbachev, I don't know, people say that he was an idealist and so on. Some people say he was an idiot. Some other people say that he was an US actually agent that makes him a traitor and so on. Now, let's get the facts. The facts are that in these countries, the Eastern European countries, except Romania, people did not fight. They agreed with the new arrangement, like an order coming from somewhere. There were some meetings between the Warsaw Pact, where Romania was also included, with Soviet Union, with Gorbachev. And Gorbachev told them, guys, I'm going to be straight with you. Things are changing here. So you don't have to actually be doing what you've been doing. Ceausescu said, what are you talking about? He was the only one who opposed Gorbachev. And the other ones were like, yes, Gorbachev, yes, yes, yes. So anyway, the other guys were deposed, no problem, some of them left. Beautiful revolutions. Bravo, bravo. Ceausescu did not want to do that. He got what he got. All right, and after that, Soviet Union said, you know what, I think we're going to just disintegrate because we're going to be stronger, smaller. And they disintegrated. The story that flies here in the West, especially in the United States, that I heard it so many times, the official story is that we won, they lost. Yes, they lost. And we outspent them. That's how the story goes. And the system was unmanageable and imploded. Yes and no. It could have gone like this for, I don't know, maybe a century. And maybe more. Anyway, if you think, oh, it was crisis everywhere. No, it wasn't. I traveled in Eastern Europe in those times. So I know how the situation was, economic situation was in Hungary, how it was in East Germany, how it was in Czechoslovakia, how it was in Romania. Romania was the idiotest one, okay? The worst one, because of certain kind of reasons. I would have gladly lived in Czechoslovakia under that communist system and didn't give a fuck about the Western countries, okay? That's how good those guys were living compared with how the Romanians were living. So, USSR disintegrated, became weak, their economy imploded, some hacks took over the economy with the help of outside banks, and they became the new guys over there. A few of them, became the guys that were in charge of New Russia, which was the remaining power of former Soviet Union. And these guys dictated what's going on. Putin was in a different place at that time. Yeltsin was a weak, drunk president, and he was just maneuvered left and right. Russia was at one of the worst times in its history. It was raped legally by the United States and the West. Legally. And that was the greatest time in the relationship of Russia and the United States for the United States of America. The United States of America had a CIA office in Moscow, and they had inspectors' offices in the military bases in Russia where the nuclear weapons were located. Did you know that? No, I bet you didn't. Or if you did, bravo. The State Department of the United States of America supported Yeltsin for his re-election. Did you know that? No. Maybe you do. Anyway, he got re-elected, the body, excellent, he got it. Then, what did they say to Gorbachev? When things happen, NATO will not move 1 inch east. How do you think the so-called revolution in East Germany happened? Just because the people all of a sudden grew some balls? No. Soviet Union took its hand off of it and said, let them do it. But no inch eastward. That's one of the arguments the Russians are putting forth. Promises and promises and promises, and a certain kind of document signed in Budapest, if you remember. I think it was 1993, yes. I think it was, where it was determined what Ukraine would do and what Russia would do and so on. So it was, we're friends now. The Warsaw Pact disintegrated. The NATO Pact defensive alliance did not disintegrate. That was formed to oppose the Warsaw Pact. That was the reason. They disintegrated. These guys did not disintegrate. NATO started expanding closer and closer and closer to a weak Russia. Russia, in the meantime, got Putin. Putin rebuilt military, rebuilt the economy. Look at how successful the economy was under Putin. I made a video around about 6-7 months about that, the economy of Russia under Putin and Yeltsin, how it grew, and I compared it with the economy of the United States, how much it grew. But I explained the different leagues that they are in. So then it was Ukraine was the next step after the 2008 summit, NATO summit in Bucharest, where then President Bush said that one day Georgia and Ukraine will join NATO. Putin thought that he had a heart attack when he heard that. So they did not only move more towards Russia with the expansion of NATO. The next countries would be bordering Russia. Even then, there were countries close, right? You take Romania, you take the Baltic states, you got Belarus, and you got Ukraine. Or you can say, well, we got Turkey. But still, there were some buffer countries between Russia and NATO. Now, they wanted to go straight in Ukraine. Putin said, no, stop doing that, don't do that. These guys, with the alliance, overthrew, they helped some, I would say them, how do you call it, not criminals, but you can call them traitors, to overthrow a democratically elected, legitimate government of Yanukovych, Viktor Yanukovych, in 2014, of Ukraine. They put another government over there with the help of outside forces. Again, that was not good. Then what they do? They start banning this and that. The Russians said, you know what? We told you, stay out of it. These guys, we don't know who they are. They overthrew a legitimate government. We got to take care of Crimea. They got Crimea. They organized a referendum, this and that. They say, well, it was the fair referendum. This guy said, no, it wasn't. And then it was the separatists in the east of Ukraine who said, you know what? We don't recognize you guys. You overthrew a democratically elected government. We're mainly Russians living in Ukraine. We don't recognize you. Well, the United States recognized those and so on. And they sent the tanks to take care of the separatists. Ukraine military went to take care of these separatists. Like, let's say, Milosevic did with the poor Albanians in Kosovo. But NATO did not intervene in behalf of the Russians like they did in behalf of the Albanians. So Putin helped these guys as NATO helped the Albanians, right? For whatever reason. I think they had some affinity or something. Another thing, right? Then Minsk agreements signed by Ukraine Guarantors, Germany and France, nothing happened for 8 years. Russia told the Americans, don't arm them, don't arm the Ukrainians, don't arm them. And they were talking about NATO. And they said, hey, we need guarantees. Russia said to NATO, to America, we need guarantees that if these things happen here, they don't threaten our security. The Americans said, bye-bye, what are you going to do? You're going to invade? Go ahead, we're waiting. They invaded to support their people that they claim they were killed by the Ukrainian military tanks. And they claim, the Russians claim, that it was a genocide over there, trying to exterminate the Russian population. I think that's a stretch. But hey, the fact is, Kiev regime tanks went to kill its own citizens in the eastern part of Ukraine. Russians intervened, and here is where we are right now. So this is Russia, the enemy, who then created these guys this hysteria that they will go and kill everyone because they're just idiots. Just idiots. They tried, the Russians, until December 2021 to talk. They sent them documents to negotiate with the Americans about the security concerns they had, the Russians. The Americans did not want to talk to them. So to me, it seems like Russia, this evil country, terrorist country, and irrational country, was kind of like not provoked whatsoever into doing anything. It's just because they're bad. Now they have an enemy, and a big enemy, right? These guys started fueling the Ukrainian nation to die for their own interests and influence and advance towards Russia. Russia is the prize, not Ukraine. And then everybody is scared by their governments and by their mass media. They're fed this kind of narrative. The Russians next will attack you and your family, your wife, your children, everything you got, they will take it because they're bad. I don't know, that's the way they are. Can you see how bad they are? They invaded Ukraine with no reason, and they commit war crimes every day. Can you hear? We say that every day, how many children die, how many kindergartens are blown up, how many hospitals. The infrastructure, unprovoked. The Ukrainians did not blow any infrastructure bridge anywhere in Crimea or anywhere else. And their rockets and missiles that we provide never killed a civilian. A civilian, none. They killed about 10 on camera that surrendered, military. But guess what? It was their fault, the military's fault, because the Russians did not know how to surrender. That was in an article. The Ukrainians who killed those 10, 12 Russians who surrendered, and one came with an automatic weapon and he got killed. These Ukrainians killed everybody else who surrendered. On the spot, on the ground. Ukraine justification. The Russian army should teach their fighters, their troops, how to surrender properly. It was their fault. Because of one, they killed everyone. So because the Russians did not teach them how to surrender properly. So it's their fault. So again, the criminal Russians. So yes, then they created this alliance, the greatest alliance of the good, because of the great evil that is, at this time, Russia. If tomorrow Russia turns around and becomes Yeltsin Russia, they will be the greatest friends and funny-looking guys that they used to be between 1991 and 1999. The same funny-looking drunks Russians, okay? That will become overnight. Next is China. Any country that becomes stronger to challenge the big boss, United States, with this new alliance, they can accomplish wonders. Congratulations for the greatest alliance in US's history. You did it. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.